Greetings here from Pintpot. Welcome to my latest episode of Climbing the Curve, a series intended to help new players become the hunter rather than the hunted a little faster. Today we're taking a quick look at maxes. Now, unlike the other classes we've looked at, the mechanics of a max is much more like a vehicle, but it is a normal infantryman. You can't just deploy one like a normal infantryman. Rather, you have to spawn them at an infantry terminal with a cost of 350 infantry resources. It's on a timer, just like normal vehicles, so you can't constantly respawn them if you lose them. And they can be repaired by engineers, just like a normal vehicle. However, unlike normal vehicles, which once you spawn them, you can't change them, maxes can have a loadout changed according to your needs. All you need to do is go to an infantry terminal and then choose between your anti-infantry, anti-vehicle or anti-air layout. When defending bases, this is a particularly useful skill as it allows you to flip between these different loadouts according to the needs of your side. Now, another crucial difference in terms of gameplay is the fact that, unlike a vehicle, a max can be revived once it has been put down. This means that the successful side which is pushing forward can continuously revive its maxes and thus maintain the momentum of the attack. Maxes have an increased health pool relative to normal infantry of 2000 rather than 500 health plus 500 shields. They also have an 80% resistance against small arms fire, giving them an effective health against small arms of 10,000. In other words, it can take hits like a tank, repairs like a tank, cost resources like a tank, but can be revived like a normal infantryman and make its way indoors just like any other infantryman can. In other words, it's absolutely deadly. So from that description, it would seem an absolutely ideal class to pick up for beginner players, as they can rack up a whole load of kills early in the game. And there is some small degree of truth in this, however there are a few issues. And for some of these problems is this, that to make your max a really effective unit, it requires a very large investment of certs. For the amount of resources you'd have to put in to properly pimp up your max, you could probably upgrade 3 or 4 other classes to a pretty decent level. So how come it's so expensive? Well, there's a number of reasons why. For the max to really be effective at any of its respective roles, be it anti-infantry, anti-vehicle or anti-air, it requires both of its arms to be using that type of weapon. However, by default you only have one anti-aircraft, one anti-infantry and one anti-vehicle weapon to start off with. This means to complete your pair and have 2 anti-vehicle or 2 anti-infantry weapons, you're going to have to invest a minimum of 250 certs. To complete the pair for anti-aircraft guns, then that's going to cost you a rather hefty 1000 certs. Now, you could skip this step and run a rather gimp version of having one anti-vehicle, one anti-infantry weapon. However, this really lacks the firepower to be effective as anti-vehicle, and in terms of anti-infantry, it doesn't have the same strafing abilities that double anti-infantry does. In other words, it's a poor compromise. Now, on top of the expense of upgrading your arms, all the upgrades to the armour of a max are pretty expensive. Now, if you're playing NC, to add insult to injury, in order to make your weapons viable, you have to invest in extended magazines. These cost 500 per arm, so another whopping 1000 cert investment just to make your weapons viable. In other words, it's a hell of a lot when you've just started playing the game. However, do not despair. Planetside 2 has a test function for trying out weapons you're thinking about buying. What I strongly recommend you do when you first start playing is to have a go at both a double anti-infantry and double anti-vehicle setup using this try function. You'll find the playstyles are really quite different, and I'll explain a little why later. Having had the opportunity to take them for a spin, you can decide which playstyle really suits you and therefore just decide to concentrate on one or the other, therefore cutting down the potential cost. Now, here you can see me running double anti-infantry weapons on my VS Max. VS and TR anti-infantry capabilities are very similar. Both their playstyles revolve around a high volume of bullets, accurate to, depending on the weapon, about 50 meters or so. However, for the NC, it is a totally different playstyle. Now, the reason for this is that NC Maxes only can use shotguns. Now, shotguns may tally with the NC faction trait, which is high damage weapons with a slower rate of fire. However, it does pose a number of problems. These weapons are effectively totally ineffective once you get past 20 meters. By default, they have a really small magazine size, hence the need to invest 1000 certs to get both arms with extended magazines. So far, so bad. However, in close range, they're absolute monsters. Provided your aim isn't so terrible, you can one-shot infantry at close range. In addition, when engaging enemy maxes, if you get at point blank range, you can take them down extremely quickly. This means that you can't play them the same way as the other ones, because you always have to have a tactic to close the gap with your enemies. This means that they're much better within small confined spaces, within rooms, and very weak out in open field play. This leaves them in the rather odd niche position of being brilliant at fixed defences, such as guarding the entrances to rooms, but really very poor when you're assaulting a base which has a much more open plan. These limitations, combined with the absolutely massive expense required to make the NC anti-infantry max viable, leads me to the conclusion that it's probably best for new players to stay away from them at the initial stage of a game. It will certainly be a lot cheaper to have a look at the anti-vehicle option and come back to the anti-infantry one a little bit later. Now, opting for 2 anti-vehicle arms has several advantages over double anti-infantry. Most importantly, it allows you to gauge any target you come across, be they soft or heavy. Also, it provides invaluable heavy support when you're making a push against a hard target, such as an enemy sundry. Also, provided you're accurate with them, anti-vehicle weapons can be absolutely deadly against infantry as well. However, they do suffer 2 major deficiencies against infantry relative to double anti-infantry. The first is effectively spammability. Anti-vehicle weapons tend to have small magazine sizes, so if you miss with your first shot, you're going to have to wait for a reload. This time delay can be fatal. Also, even if you're accurate, if you're facing multiple enemies, you simply don't have enough killing power within one magazine to take them all out. This in comparison to most anti-infantry weapons, where you can kill multiple targets with them. Therefore, if you're playing with anti-vehicle weapons, you need to stick with your team much more than you have to with anti-infantry. It's a more conservative playstyle, but can be very rewarding, so it's really up to your personal preference. Now, on the cost front, one positive that maxes do have is their default ability, Charge, is excellent. This allows you to cross gaps, get out of dangerous situations, or flee if you're in real danger. Using Charge, you can rush rooms where otherwise the defences would be too strong for you to assault. However, having said that, remember, if you get your max isolated, you become very vulnerable and can be taken out pretty easily by multiple infantry. Therefore, as powerful as the max is, to really fulfill its potential, it requires engineer and medic support. Now, the third option is double anti-aircraft. You do start off with one of your 2 anti-air guns unlocked. However, to unlock the other one costs a whopping 1000 certs. Given the principal role of flat guns in this game is aerial denial as opposed to actually killing your target, you're not necessarily going to get a massive return in terms of experience and therefore cert points from this investment. Therefore, my best advice is to give it a pass. If you really feel the need to get vengeance against all those pesky ESFs and liberators who keep on blowing you up, then the route I recommend you go down is to get the heavy assaults ground-to-air lock-on missile for a much more modest 250 certs investment. So, in conclusion, maxes can be rewarding, particularly when you're playing with teammates. In addition, the huge kill streaks you can rack up on them can be very attractive. However, I strongly recommend that you give a whirl to both double anti-infantry and double anti-vehicle before you invest any certs. The total potential cost for upgrading maxes can be absolutely ruinous, particularly to new players. Unless this type of gameplay really appeals to you, I would say that for the amount of certs you would have to invest to make your max particularly good, but you're much better off spending it on the other classes initially and coming to the max a little later on. Now, in my next episode, I'm going to be taking a look at the lightning tank. Then, in a later episode, I'll take another little look at maxes to see what potentially you could be spending your certs on. If you found this video at all useful, please feel free to comment, like, dislike, or subscribe as appropriate. Now, in the meantime, have a good one, and Pintpot out.